It soon.
Excellent. Um, so um, in front of you is your computer terminal and a whole bunch of pads strewn out. And if you were to notice the star date, it would be the star date of when a new captain took over your old position, and you were awaiting your next assignment, and you were given the next assignment, and you were officially choosing who you wanted on your crew. But this was well before meeting Dax, about 6 months before meeting Dax on Deep Space Nine. Probably about a year and a half ago at this point, of what you know as current time.
Mhm.
Um, so with that, you notice what do you do with that information that you notice that it's that time frame?
Yeah, I think what would happen is it's that habitual reaching out for the drink that you know is supposed to be hot and it hasn't because you've left it
Mhm.
for so long because you were so busy reading all of your reports, and who could be on your crew manifest. And it's that moment where your hand touches the cup, and I realize that I've done this so many times before, but not here and not for at least a year and a half. That I know that something's wrong.
And you would look
I know
down
that
and
I've had the time tachyons.
mhm.
I'm aware that I'm dressed. I'm aware that I'm in my apartment, and I recognize everything here. But I also recognize that this is the wrong. This is wrong. This is the wrong time. I shouldn't be here.
So yes, you are dressed. Surprisingly, you are in your Starfleet uniform, which is odd for you since you are in your own home at this point. However, at this point, it makes sense. It's odd, but it makes sense that you're dressed. You see everyone that you're going through, and you have been given a laundry list of people to look at from Starfleet. They are really making sure that this updated U.S.S. Insignia has the best possible crew for going out into the Gamma Quadrant. You've been told that this is a very important mission to Starfleet, and that it is imperative that the updated ship um, does its mission as you've been told to explore. Um, you hear a light knock at the door, and you recognize the knock. The knock has happened before. You've been through this conversation before, but it's happening again. What do you do?
The first time the knock happened, I didn't answer it. They just came in, and so there's this moment where Lex is wondering, should I let it happen or should I change it? And in that moment, they change it. They want it changed. They want this to be different. And so they turn around and they say, "Come on in."
The door opens. And by door opens, it's not like, door. The door opens. Um, and in front of you stands Oriana. Who is Oriana?
Oriana is my girlfriend, and we've been together pretty much consistently for the last 2.5 years, with breaks being taken between each of us being assigned in different assignments, which is really hard to do long distance. But we do somehow manage to keep everything alive. And certainly when we're both back home, home being San Francisco, we make the most of our time. And I know that time's coming to the end because I've got my next assignment, and Usually they'd be with me picking out my crew, but that hasn't happened this time around.
Oriana walks in lightly. Um, how would you describe Oriana?
Oriana is a smile. And that's what I noticed first. That's what I know about her most is that smile. And you'd think that would mean that it would be a perfect one, but it's not. She's got a little snaggle tooth on one side, and her lip isn't even on the top. She's got a very generous lower lip, but the top one is a little larger on one side than another. She has bright eyes, and she has her hair curls impossibly as if it should be curled artificially, but she wakes up that way, so she has good genes. And we're of a height, though we aren't built anything alike. Where I'm much more straight, they are much more curvaceous, and it it gives them a sultriness to their walk. It was one of the first things I told them, that it was unfair, an unfair advantage.
What planet does Oriana hail from?
Orion is from Earth. She grew up there. But what she describes as her way of living is almost like how I would have envisioned how things would have been otherwise for me. So the way that she always talks about it, where she grew up, she didn't grow up in San Francisco. She grew up on the islands, and she's darker.
Very
And
nice.
I've only visited once, and it was like something out of a brochure. It's a paradise in San Liza, not like it would be here.
Oriana walks in, and she's actually not looking directly at your eyes. She's avoiding direct eye contact. She's looking down at her feet almost, looking at the organized piles around the office as she often did. Um,
She is, I'm sorry, she is Beta Z, but she was
oh,
raised here.
great.
In Oriana's a Betazoid name,
Great.
and she's from here though.
Great. Can Oriana read minds, or is she a feelings type of beta Z?
Yeah, Oriana is, alas, Oriana is a telepath. She's an empath, and I have telepathy. So we don't communicate quite the same.
Mm-hmm.
And again, an unfair advantage to Oriana.
So you can hear Oriana thinking. You can hear the thoughts of what she's going to say before she even says it, and I feel like you would let her say it though out loud because she tends to prefer speaking out loud. I would think, since she's only an empath. Um, and she says to you, I've packed up the last of my stuff. I just wanted to see how you were doing uh, before I went.
And again, Lex has done this before. We've had this conversation before, and there would be this want to change it, to make a different decision, to say something different, to undo what happened already and what's about to happen next. And it doesn't matter, because what comes out of their mouth is the same, which is, you've already gone.
You hear the thoughts of general conflict in what Oriana would like to say. Um, Again, you've heard these thoughts before. They're nothing new to you. It's a situation that you've been through it. Oriana then goes, I just. I'd like to spend just another minute with you looking out this window. And she turns and looks out the absolute scenic view of San Francisco. You can see Starfleet Academy is actually not that far away. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge. It is just an absolute. It's nighttime. It's beautiful outside. It's Earth in the 25th century. It's idyllic. It is almost utopian. It is a clear night. You see all of the starships going around and the various shuttles going in and out. It is just it's calming. Even though there's a lot of movement, it's very calming to look out and see all of that. Um, I just she goes, I understand if you wouldn't, but it would mean the world to me if you could do this.
I really wish that I could have denied it the first time, and I couldn't, and I can't this time either. It's just not. There's nothing I can do. And when she turns towards the window, I'm right there, and I can feel how close she is on one side, and I know what her profile looks like in the light from the window because I've watched her that way for years.
Um, as you're looking out the window, um, all of the sudden you notice that thoughts stop coming from her. Outside, the stars stop twinkling and the shuttles stop moving. And you are left with an Oriana and a San Francisco frozen in time. You, however, are not. You have full reign of the moment that is happening. Behind you, if you were to care to look after looking out the window, you were looking out the window, right? Just to clarify for myself.
I know I was looking out the window. I was conscious of her standing next to me. In that moment where everything froze, I imagine the first thing I'd look at is Oriana's profile still,
Okay, great.
unblinking, unmoving. Um, but then would continue to turn, look over my shoulder.
It's in that moment that you notice the pads on your desk are actually in the middle of transport. It is the familiar blue glow of the transporter beam, however, frozen in time. You can't affect anything, but you can see that something has, in the process of replacing what is the pads currently on your desk. However, precisely, very precisely, the pads that are beaming in are matching the exact position of where you had strewn all of the rest of the pads. And as you notice as you notice that scene of things are changing on your desk without you even realizing, the scene starts to play again, and Oriana actually turns and looks at you and seems curious as you're not looking at her or out the window anymore as she thought you were doing. Um, and she says, "What's going on?" And is turning, as I'm guessing you're still looking at the scene on your desk. The
Mhm.
As she turns and looks at your desk, the transport finishes, and she doesn't even notice that a transport has happened. She just is staring where you're staring, and looks at you with curiosity. I I know that you're concerned about. You deserve this commission. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. This scene is slightly different from your memory.
Mhm.
You never looked behind to see what was going on your desk. The words that were had as you were looking out the window were different. Time has been This moment has been now slightly altered, and you can tell that. This is new territory. This isn't the same anymore.
So I would take a step towards the desk because I know that the pads have changed. But the words that come out of my mouth, even though I know I should be looking at her when I say them, and I'm not, I'm distracted by what's on the desk, is then come with me.
She gives a heavy sigh as she follows you over to your desk, not really taking the not looking at her as a slight, but as a you've gone into work mode idea, and you feel that from her, you hear that from her, and she goes, "You know I can't. If I were to do that, I would give up everything I've worked for."
I know the feeling.
She you hear very clearly in your mind the word ouch from her, where clearly you struck a chord. Um, and she goes, I'm I'm going off to I'm going off to the Fitzgerald now. Uh, I wish we could have done this differently. And she kind of waits for a moment before she says that to see what your response will be. She feels the change in attitude, just still interpreting it as you've gone into full work mode, you've gone into full curiosity mode, and she just kind of waits to hear what you're going to say.
Well, the truth is, this is an old game. This is an old game that we play as a couple, where she schools her thoughts and I school my emotions because we know the other person can hear them. So there's the words that you say and the way that you hold yourself to project the emotion that you are allowing the other person to hear and experience. And then there's the one that you keep inside that you A, hope, and B, expect that they will respect, not digging deeper. And once you get into that dance, it's very hard to stop. And that's the dance that we're in. And I really wish we could stop because she is schooling her words and I'm schooling my emotions. And we can't seem to stop, even now. So she wants to think that I'm in work mode, and I will play along with being in work mode. And I pay attention to the desk and start picking up the pads to see if they look different than how I remember. because I remember choosing my crew and I remember the slew that they had given me. And I'm concentrating on the readout in front of me, even though I really can't see the words. And let her feel that my confusion and frustration is because of that and not because of her.
Damn, that's complicated. I love it. Um, so she goes, "All right then. I I hope our paths cross soon." And she you feel confusion from her. You hear confusion in her mind, and she turns away. The door swishes open and swishes closed. And as she walks further down the hallway away from the office, the thoughts fade and start to change into work thoughts about what comes next, about the next steps and how to move on from this. And she finally fades out of your mind with a final thought of, I can't believe this is finally the end. And then she fades out of your head. In front of you, you hadn't been really paying attention to the words because you'd been paying more attention to Oriana. However, as you start scrolling through the paths that had now been put onto your desk, you're seeing different names, a different crew that have already been chosen. You had chosen different people. These are different people. However, their profiles are far vastly better than what you had originally chosen. They weren't originally on your list. If you start looking at names, you're noticing names that weren't even in the slew of names. However, their profile shows aspects of personalities that you want on a ship that is dedicated to you, that you know will listen, that you know are going to be just 10 out of 10. Your bridge crew is still not selected fully, as this has happened before you met your bridge crew in that fateful bar on that seedy planet. However, there are definitely names that you hadn't originally chosen, but if you were to look at them and look at their profiles, they're almost made for you. One name is a Vulcan named Rakan. There's a Denobulant named Trop. There is a Trill with the Indari symbiote. And there's a human named Bryce. Um, these are their academy records speak volumes about the kind of character they are and what they do to try and reach the goal. This is before they had blown up, you know, part of Starfleet Academy, but their record is far more glowing. And if you were to maybe even question a little bit how glowing Starfleet Academy graduates' profiles can be, they seem to almost be glowing with future aspects of what they've done. But that can't be possible. What do you do with that?
I think this is the moment that I'm most aware that we're at a bridge point between times. And so the sense that I have that this is more the promise of their excellence, I would attribute to some of this tachyon anomaly. That if I could be in the past, reliving the past, aware of my present, that it wouldn't be too far to believe that I'm taking a glimpse into a future. And I don't know why it's transported, but I also know that this is a familiar feeling to leap forward and trust on instinct, because that's how I'm going to get my bridge crew.
As you take deeper looks at the pads, you definitely can tell that the bridge crew spots are still yours to fill, but the general crew is, basically picked for you because you had picked a crew before. This is just aspects of the crew you would have never even thought of that bring out the best. And would you go anywhere with this information? Would you sit down? What are you trying to do in this particular moment to try and explain what's happening?
Well, if there's anything that we've been trained on, it's what happens when you mess with the space-time continuum. So,
Facts.
is to, is to gather the information, keep record very closely, because you never know what's going to shift. The reason that you go forward or backward in time is usually to bring back information that's going to be relevant to the present timeline. So that's what I'm trying to keep in mind. I'm not going to question the changes. I'm not going to try and reestablish my original crew. There's a reason that these have changed and why I have such a glowing system. But it makes me think of my mission. And it makes me think of what the insignia is for. And oddly enough, it probably gives me some closure, maybe is not the right word. Oriana's in the past, and this is the future.
At that point, if you were at that point, the room around you starts to glow that bright, swirling white light. And again, so blinding you probably have to close your eyes. And in a flash, you're standing in the office you should have been standing in when you walked through that door. However, in front of you, you're facing the door. There's a desk behind you. You're back in your robe. You're. It is very clear that you are back in the present moment. But in front of you is a man in a bowler hat, dressed very 1920s to 40s, Earth history, who looks at you and says, "You needed to know that information." And his voice almost booms a little bit. It's not a natural, normal speaking voice, but it booms just a hair. Um, what do you do with that?
Still holding my tricorder, aren't I?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're going to start taking readings right now.
Your readings are throwing a whole bunch of. If there were dials on there, they'd be doing this. It wouldn't know what to do. Um,
I
he
know.
he he goes. Those things have never been able to properly read me.
I'm sorry that we haven't been properly introduced.
You are. One moment. Oh God, I had your character sheet up and then I didn't. Um,
Alex,
hold on. I can edit this. Um, you.
Alex and Thea, if that
Thank you.
helps.
You are Alexinthia Morganeth Stadi of Beta Z. I am the Guardian of Forever. Do you recognize that name?
I do indeed.
I don't often get involved, especially since my purpose is to ensure the timeline of this particular universe. However, it is imperative that you realize your crew was not chosen by you.
Was it you?
I do not make changes to my own universe's timeline. I simply show what could happen and what has happened. You originally were not aware that your paths had been switched without your knowledge. Your conversation clouded your knowledge of your room. However, there are greater forces at work, revolving around you and that ship that's out there. And who you've gained as crew. Are you aware of your Starfleet's Section 31?
What do you know of Starfleet Section 31?
He laughs. The laugh booms a little bit, but the voice is actually coming down to a normal speaking tone voice at this point. And he says, I have seen them do some strange things. They appear to want to keep the status quo as much as they can. They claim to be the keepers of utopia. And in some regards, they are. Without them, there are certain events of your time that couldn't have happened. And with them, there are some events of your time that shouldn't have happened. Or, depends on your perspective, I suppose. I know that they are working on fixing something they have no right to fix, but they are trying to. Their fix will result in greater repercussions. And I can only see it happening one way. This is my chance to interfere. I don't have many of them. And he just looks at you, waiting for a response.
So you say that my crew was chosen for me in the past without my knowledge. You've given me that knowledge, and it's to make me aware that there are greater forces. But you propose that what Section 31 plans should remain broken. Is that correct?
Section 31 has planned for events they should not have knowledge of. They plan for events in the future. They have only gained that knowledge through happenstance. And sheer luck. There are only so many times I can interfere with my universe's timeline. Once with Captain Kirk, and a few more times in your future. This is one of those times that I need to say to somebody who will have direct access to events that you need to be aware that your mission has a hidden meaning.
And what would you have me do? I am a Starfleet officer.
Like most Starfleet officers, you wish for the best of the Federation, Starfleet, and of the galaxy as a whole, and I commend Starfleet for instilling that in people. Do what you know is right.
If that was the case, perhaps you would have chosen a different point in my history.
That point in your history is transformative for you. You had to experience the hurt again. I could reveal myself to other people, but alas, it is not wise. People tend to use my gateway for destructive purposes. Do what you know is right. If you come across he shakes his head and goes, time changes often. Every choice creates a new universe, a new me, a new you, a new Rakan, a new Trop, a new Bryce, a new Bana. However, what Section 31 is doing will irreparably harm your future, the future of the Federation, and the future of Starfleet. I cannot stop them. It is not my place. I am a guardian. It is your job. He turns around. The door opens for him, and he walks through the threshold, and he simply vanishes. No one in the hallway notices that this person has walked through, vanishes, or anything. It's like it never even happened. The door closes and you're left alone. Your tricorder readings have returned to normal. What do you do?
Well, first, is there anything on the desk?
On the desk is just a simple computer terminal. However, it is pulled up with logs that you haven't seen before. They say classified at the very top. And if you were to sit down and read them, you would at least see the header that it's classified and Section 31 information.
I still have my tricorder, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. I'm going to download this information into my tricorder, read at my leisure, in perhaps a more safe space.
You do the thing. It is obviously super easy for a Starfleet officer to download information. The computer terminal winks out of, being on after you've downloaded all of the information, and you've got all of the Section 31 information now on your tricorder.
The last thing I would do, which is perhaps a tad unorthodox, is that usually what we have in our desks at Starfleet is that we use a magnetized bottom the drawer underneath in order to hold it in place, especially when we're having issues in gravitational issues, so they don't slide open and close. I'm going to open up one of those drawers, and I want to jimmy off one of the magnets on one side and very carefully wipe this computer terminal.
Okay. Do you have dice on you?
I do indeed.
Okay. Let's actually do a roll for funsies. It's not difficult. However, I just want to see what we can do. Give me a
This is not, high tech, but it's
it's
something.
basic. It's a
Yes.
basic wipe. And surprisingly, for being as advanced in the 25th century, magnets can still do some damage. Um, I'm going to give me a daring and security, which your role would be you want a 14 or less,
Mhm.
with your attributes and disciplines. And if you could, it's really only going to be a difficulty of 1, but you get a chance to roll 2 dice. So go ahead and roll 2 d20 and see what numbers you get. Oh no.
I rolled a 2 and a 1.
So, for in this system, a 1 is actually a nat 20.
That's right.
So, you take one of these magnets, and for some odd reason, these magnets are surprisingly stronger. It looks like this office recently got renovated, and installed one of the newer Starfleet desks, which have noticeably stronger magnets. When you take one of the magnets off and out, and you go and attempt to wipe the drive of the computer, um, it basically sticks right to the computer, um, and you hear this lovely shorting out as the computer terminal fries. Um, you probably think to yourself as a Starfleet officer, why are those magnets being used right near a computer terminal? That makes no sense. However, you that computer now needs to be replaced
Mhm. And I'm keeping
completely.
it.
All right.
This is a
At +1 magnet of smiting to your pocket. All right. After you smite the computer out of existence, what do you do next?
well, we already tried to get readings off of the anomaly. Um,
Which is now gone. Your tricorder is completely nominal at this point.
yes, which also tells me I do know something of my Starfleet history. So, um, with this in mind, and the fact that I'm wearing a robe and a communicator going commando, it's time to leave.
Probably.
Well, luckily, that doesn't bother me, so we can just walk. Like those dreams that you have that you think it's just you walking in a satin short robe and
Mm-hmm.
somebody's gonna. Nobody says anything, so it's
No,
fine.
no. As you're walking by, people really aren't caring. Again, you're in the civilian section. This probably has happened, during the midnight portions of the night where people can't really sleep and they're just walking around in their robes. It's fairly commonplace in this little area. So, also, if anybody recognizes your face, they know who you are, and it's a little well known that if you are walking around during your off hours, you might be in a robe. You know, They don't know
Give
what
me
you do. They don't know what you do on the inside of your quarters. They just know that if you ever outside of your quarters during your off hours, you're in a row.
um, well, in my quarters.
Well, yeah.
If I'm out,
Well,
but my point is to come back to my own rooms, my own guest quarters.
great.
And as a
Um,
Mac side, I have my tricorder, which is going to be some interesting reading for me. But I probably what strikes me before processing that in any way to understand why it is these four specifically. And I would take their pads off the manifest and be able to review. Do they have that glowing recommendation of kind of forethought? Do they have that sort of weight to them, or did the Tokyo drift and the explosion somehow alter the timeline of who they could be here?
the glowing recommendation is there, in addition to the Tokyo drifting and the exploding. However, the glowing recommendation comes from the head of Starfleet security, surprisingly, for all of them. Um, Very odd that it all comes from the same person, but it's all there. Um, Extreme grades, wonderful to Starfleet, the whole nine. Pretend it's a report card that your kid got that is just like A pluses and just like, stars are coming out of it, and that kind of business. It is on the level of odd, though, that repeated four times. You know, it's repeated. It is the same. It is lazy, but it's the same. Not meant for anyone to really notice that much, but if they were to look just an extra second longer, okay, that's weird. But on top of that, you have their amazing job during the Kobayashi Maru. Um, their um, their instructor, who was a Vulcan, who is still a Vulcan, he is just now retired after that. Gave them basically as close to winning as possible, that a Vulcan will allow in written form with the Kobayashi Maru. In fact, you're probably looking at it and you're like, wow, I didn't do that well on the Kobayashi Maru. Damn.
Oh, well, I'm a Kobe.
No
So
one does that well.
right, I would take note of their instructor, but most especially, I would take note of the name of the security officer who gave those glowing reviews.
Great.
And the last thing that I want to do, even if I hadn't meant to, is to look out the window at my ship, because this reminds me of the last window I just looked out of.
As you
And the
look
parents
out,
are there.
as you look out, it's a different kind of paradise. You're looking out. Your room is actually one of the ones that are open to open space, and the ship is actually in one of the metal dry docks. With the giant arms that go like this, and the ship's sitting there. And by the time that you're looking back out again, the sensor dish has been fully installed. And you're actually noticing different lights turning on the ship as they're testing the different turning on of systems. Um, you get a small ping on your wall-based computer monitor, and it's kind of like the little iPhone notification sort of deal in which it says, Lieutenant Dax has arrived. Just as a little note, that Lieutenant Dax has arrived on station, and that you'll be expected to meet with them in the next day or so. In the next day, actually. And then, as the ship fully turns on after each system. You notice the Bassard collectors turn on and then off. The nacelles turn on and then off as they're kind of testing everything. The whole ship turns on, and it it's a beauty. It's your own ship. It's your very first ship that is yours. 100% your crew, and it's just breathtaking. It's a different type of utopia. It is your way forward, and it's just wow.
She's beautiful, and it's totally unfair.
And I think that's where we'll end. I think